How long should I cook beef ribs? One of the most common questions I get, today I'll show you. One of the most common questions I get asked when it comes to barbecue is how long do you smoke beef ribs? And that's a really loaded question. It depends on what you're cooking on, the weather outside, how much your beef ribs weigh, and actually what type of beef ribs you're cooking. Today we're gonna take two separate types of beef ribs and try and give you a guideline on how long they might take to cook. Now keep in mind that the weight of my beef ribs might be a little bit different than yours, but this should get you around a ballpark of how long beef ribs is gonna take. You might have to take off 45 minutes or add 45 minutes, but I don't think that's gonna be detrimental to your cook at all. Today we're using our Outlaw stick burner. So what I've done is I've got my charcoal basket completely filled with lump charcoal. Now I've got two charcoal starters. I'm gonna put them right here in the middle. I'm gonna use my flame saber and light them up. Now while our lump charcoal is getting nice and hot, we're gonna go ahead and prepare the beef ribs. This should take around 15 to 20 minutes to get where I can put wood on it. Now, just for the sake of this video, this is a 6.29 pound rack of plate ribs, also known as dino ribs. We feel like this is a pretty common rack of ribs that people would be using, so that's exactly why we're gonna use it today. And I'm telling you guys the weight because obviously that is also going to factor into how long these are gonna take to cook. Now with beef plate ribs, I typically don't take any of the fat off, but I do have some pieces here that are a little bit thicker than I'd like. So we're just gonna go ahead and trim that off a little bit. And that right there is good enough for me. Now beef plate ribs or dino ribs are typically very marbled, even if you get a prime or a choice. So we wanna make sure that we cook these long enough to render out all this fat. Now for seasoning today with these beef plate ribs, we're gonna start with some Killer Hogs TX. We've got that salt, pepper, garlic. It's gonna be thicker granules, which is perfect for beef. We're gonna go on with a pretty good layer. This right here is also gonna help build that bark on this beef. Make sure to get the sides as well. And to go on top of these beef ribs, we're gonna be using Gulf Coast Smoke Trifecta. That's our blend, and it's now in a 32-ounce bottle. Now with this, we're gonna go much lighter. We do want some of that barbecue flavor and color to come across, but we want the star of the show to be the salt, pepper, garlic for sure. Same exact thing, we wanna make sure to season all sides. And this right here is perfect. Now our next rack of ribs is gonna be beef finger ribs. This is another really common type of beef rib that people typically cook in the backyard. You'll see it's nowhere near as big as the plate rib or the dino rib. It's gonna be much thinner in size, so I do think we're gonna get big time differences on how long these are gonna cook. We're gonna keep this simple and season these the same exact way we did our beef plate ribs. I'm gonna go over top with Killer Hogs TX, really good layer. And then again, we're gonna go over top with Trifecta. I would say we go heavy with TX, medium on Trifecta. Now just a quick side-by-side comparison, the beef plate ribs you can see are much thicker. They're gonna take a much longer time than our beef finger ribs. These are only 3 bones. Over here you have around 7 or 8. So they are a different type of rib, but they both are beef ribs. About 25 minutes later, my lump charcoal is nice and hot, so I'm ready to put some wood on it. Today we're gonna be using post oak, and I have my vents adjusted here on my Outlaw. Basically what I want them to do is point at each other. So just in a few minutes we'll go to the stack, but this is about a quarter of the way open. I'm gonna put my post oak right on the lump, and after around 3 to 5 seconds, it's gonna fully ignite. So we're gonna go ahead and close this door up. And now it's time to look at our Outlaw stack. So if it's straight up and down, that means that this is wide open and this Outlaw is gonna get extremely hot. So what we're looking to do is wait to get around the temperature that we're looking for, and then we'll adjust this stack. Like I said, we want it about pointing at our firebox. We're gonna go ahead and put our beef ribs on. I have them all the way to the left, closest to the stack. We've got our plate ribs and our finger ribs. Now that the beef ribs are on the pit, we're gonna wait at least 45 minutes before we look at them, but we are gonna consistently be checking that fire around every 20 to 30 minutes. It's been right at 25 minutes on our smoker. We want to start taking a look at the fire. You'll see that there's still a good flame in there. There's plenty of coals, and that's exactly when I personally want to start putting wood on my fire. So back in the day, I would wait for the temps to drop before I started putting a new stick on, but now I want to maintain them the whole way. So I prefer a big coal bed over here, and that's why I'm going to consistently be adding sticks to this fire. So every 20 to 25 minutes, I'm absolutely going to add a stick, even if it doesn't need it. Now you can see that this big piece of wood starts on fire pretty quickly because I have that nice bed of coals. And this is something that I consistently want to be able to do. I don't want the wood to sit in there too long without catching on fire, so that's why we're going to consistently be adding. Now the best part about this Outlaw is I can control everything right here with this stack. So like I said earlier, if I open this all the way, it's going to keep climbing, but if I choke it back, it's going to stay exactly where it's at. So I don't have to worry about how big my fire is in my firebox. I can control everything right here. It's been right at 45 minutes. We're rocking and rolling right at 300 on the Outlaw. We're going to check on our beef ribs. And if you can see them from here, they already look absolutely out of this world. We are going to go ahead and spritz these a little bit. Today I've got water and Worcestershire sauce. This is about a 4-to-1 blend. You guys can just use water if you want. Just gonna go ahead and keep these nice and moist. And we decided we're gonna go no wrap on these beef ribs, so we're gonna let them smoke the whole way, all the way till they're done. Now, keep in mind, today we're trying to figure out how long these are gonna take for you guys to know moving forward. So I can already tell you that we're getting a lot of pullback here. It's been 45 minutes on these beef finger ribs. These are gonna be done much sooner than our plate ribs, but you can see the difference here. Now, we're gonna go ahead and close this up, spray it just a little bit more, and we'll come back in another 45 minutes and we'll check on these. It's been right at 2 hours on our beef ribs. We're gonna go ahead and check them again. We have been periodically spritzing. The smoker is still running at 300 degrees and we have been adding post oak the whole time. So let's take a look. And just right off the rip, I could tell you that this smaller rack over here looks like it's done, in my opinion. Just looking and seeing all that pullback, I could kind of sort of tell. They look really good. We'll close this up so we don't lose too much heat. Now there's a lot of fat that was running in between these beef ribs, so I want to make sure not to probe the fat and probe the actual meat. You can see the meat here, so I'm going to probe it, and you'll see we're right around 190 degrees here, over here, 192, and to be honest, they are not done. So it looked like they were done to me, but they still have a little bit more to go. They feel pretty tender, but I think they could be more tender. We'll put these back on and let them keep on rolling. So what I'm going to do with these big ribs here, take them out real quick. You guys can see they look really good. I'm just gonna go ahead and rotate them and put them right back on. So now I'm gonna spritz again. Just gonna hit them with that water and Worcestershire sauce. Take a quick probe here, and you'll see these are around 150. I need them closer to 205. They still got a ways to go. It's been another 45 minutes on our beef ribs. Last time they were around 192, 193. We want to check them again and see where they're at. And now again, you can see this small rack is pretty much, looks to me, done. Now these beef finger ribs do tend to shrink up a lot, but they still have a beautiful bite in between those bones. So yeah, that feels much better. So right now we're at 204. Yeah, I feel a really, really good bark and they feel nice and tender. We're gonna go ahead and pull this smaller rack. This took us 2 hours and 45 minutes to complete. Now while we're already here, we'll check this larger rack. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's done or not done, but let's just check it. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but there's some fat popping in there that looks really, really good. I know fat's rendering and these are gonna taste out of this world. So this rack also feels done. It feels really good. Feels like it slides in with ease. I got like about 196 over here, but they feel really good. I'm also going to call this top rack good as well. So again, 2 hours and 45 minutes total for our beef finger ribs. Now that our finger ribs are done, we're going to put all of our attention on these beef plate ribs. I'm just going to go ahead and get a probe, stick it right in. Oh man, that feels really good actually. That's right at, you could see it, maybe 180. So 2 hours and 45 minutes in, we're around 180 in these beef ribs. We're gonna keep those rocking and rolling. I'll hit them with a little bit more spritz and we're just gonna let the smoke roll. It's been right at 5.5 hours on our plate ribs. We're gonna go ahead and check these out and see if they're done. I'm not sure if you guys can see that in the camera, but that fat is popping. It looks really good. If I had to take a guess, these are probably done or pretty close to it. Let's go ahead and use our probe. Oh yeah, slides in like absolute butter. They're reading right at 205 degrees. Yeah, these are done. These are 100% done. So you can see in some areas it's a little bit more tender than others, but this looks perfect to me. So these beef ribs took 5.5 hours. We've brought the beef ribs inside. It's been a 5.5 hour cook on our Outlaw smoker, but the cook is technically not done yet. So 5.5 hours on the smoker at 300 degrees using post oak, but now we have to rest this. So we're gonna leave these on our counter for around 45 minutes just so they can stop cooking, and then we'll wrap them in foil and put them in our Cambro for at least an hour to an hour and a half before we slice these up. If you guys don't have a Cambro, that's completely fine. Any insulated cooler will also work, or you could put it on your oven on keep warm. And again, at this point, the goal is not to keep cooking these, it's just to let them rest until it's time to eat. After all is said and done, our beef ribs took around 5.5 hours and 3 hours respectively for the plate ribs and for the beef finger ribs. We did around a 2-hour rest on both of those, so that's going to give you guys a guideline if you're making beef ribs at home. Don't forget, we cooked at 300 degrees. If you're going to cook hotter or faster, that's obviously going to adjust your timeline, so just adjust accordingly. We're going to go ahead and cut into our beef ribs today, see how we did, but we wanted to give you guys an idea of how long it'll take you to cook beef ribs at home. We're going to start with our dino ribs. And these are feeling and looking really damn good. I can see the moisture in there. Nice smoke ring. It doesn't take as long as a brisket, and I actually think that you're gonna get a better bite here. I'm gonna take a bite of one of the end pieces. I gotta share with dad and family. "100% one of the best bites, if not the best bite in barbecue right here. So tender. The bark is so salty, so peppery, it's delicious. Trifecta comes through just a little bit there. Plenty of smoke on this. Don't forget, we did not wrap these at all. This was a completely unwrapped cook, so it's nice and barky. You get that texture. Of course, the meat is nice and succulent. I don't know what to tell you about this, but if you don't have 5.5 hours to make the best beef ribs of your life, you need to reevaluate. Now for the beef finger ribs. If you don't have as much time, you can obviously make these, and this was probably one of my favorite bites of barbecue. A few years back, Sabrina and I would make these literally a couple of times a week. I mean, we just absolutely love them. Really easy to make, and they're pretty inexpensive as well. Quick bite. When I think of backyard barbecue, this is exactly what I go for, especially because Dad made these a lot back in the day, and I just really feel like it gives you that backyard flavor. Nothing crazy about it. Salt, pepper, trifecta, and smoke. Again, if you don't have 3.5 hours to make these, you got to check yourself because this is out of this world. So, how long does it take to cook beef ribs? Well, as you can see, it absolutely depends on what type of beef ribs you're cooking and what kind of smoker you have. But hopefully this guideline helps you a little bit, get some confidence, get in the backyard, cook you up some beef ribs. As always, we really appreciate you guys tuning into this video. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next one.